Welcome to Tokyo Game Life, a Tokyo-based video game podcast focusing on Nintendo and gaming culture in Japan's capital. Your host Mono here to bring you a slice of gaming life from Tokyo. Developer Lucy Blundell joins the podcast to chat about her game, Videoverse. It blends early internet communities with Miiverse and Japanese game obsession. We dive into the origins of the project and this special part of gaming fandom. Lucy also went to the Capcom Creations exhibit here in Tokyo, so we will also take you inside one of the best gaming exhibits I've visited in Japan. Plus, a whole lot of Nintendo news, including 3 directs. Let's jump into the game section with Lucy Blundell and Videoverse. Today in the game section, we are going to look at Videoverse, which just hit Nintendo Switch a few months ago. Joining me to chat all about it is a special guest. So guest, please introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Lucy Blundell. I go by Kinmoku Online, and I'm an independent game developer from the UK, but living in Germany. And I tend to make short, emotional visual novels, and I've been in the game industry now for 16 years.
Thank you so much for joining me. I always got to lead with the most obvious yet most important question. What is Videoverse?
Yeah, so Videoverse is a short, emotional narrative adventure game that's set in a fictional video game console called the Kinmoku Shark. It is named after the social network that is on the Shark system, and Videoverse is inspired by old-school internet forums, Miiverse, MSN Messenger, and is generally my love letter to video games.
This is one of those games where I saw it and thought, okay, I'm sold. I don't need to look at reviews or impressions. It digs into a very specific part of my brain, and I'm instantly convinced. I want to hear about the origins of the project, as the setting is very different from your previous game, One Night Stand. What inspired you to make a game focused on online communities?
Yeah, I wanted to make a game about online communities. I think this idea, I'd had it for a few years. Really, I was working on another project, and during that project I developed like a drawing mechanic, and the drawings looked a lot like Miiverse drawings, and I thought, oh, that would be fun in a visual novel if it was like a love story told in Miiverse. But I was working on something else and I put it aside. Then the pandemic happened and a lot of life changes happened as well, and I realized that I was very grateful for the internet and video games and how they were helping us in those early months of the pandemic to stay connected and to stay in touch with our friends and even meet new people online. And we were playing games more, and I felt like I just had to switch gears. So I actually stopped what I was working on and jumped straight into Videoverse, and it just went from there and took over my life for the next 3 years.
One of the things I think is fascinating about the game is that it kind of blends early 2000s forum culture and instant messenger style communication along with Miiverse from the mid 2010s. So 2 very different time periods. Why did you decide to combine these 2 eras of online communities?
Yeah, I think the big reason was that I'm a bit older, so I wanted to have my kind of younger teenage self in there. So having that point where the internet came into everyone's households around the kind of mid 2000s, I thought it was a very interesting and fascinating time. But then I was also very inspired by Miiverse and Nintendo, and that obviously came later. But I had this idea, what if there was this video game console that had put form and gameplay ahead of like graphical fidelity? Like, what if there was this really cool system that was portable and it had the internet, but the graphics were like really bad or something? So yeah, it just became this big kind of mash of like different things, I guess. Things that felt very close to me and that I cared about.
I think Miiverse at the time was often mocked. Nintendo made an entirely closed social media network that was slow and limiting, but now there is a tremendous amount of nostalgia and respect for it. We all agreed they need to bring it back immediately. I would move from Blue Sky to there in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I love how it was brought to life in the game. I was upvoting art, I was making comments. I'm interested in how you recreated it in Videoverse. What were some of the challenges of basically making your own Miiverse?
Yeah, so the game is made in Ren'Py, which is a visual novel engine. And most people, if they have heard of Ren'Py, they'll think, oh, it's a more traditional adventure game with a character talking to you in a text box, and it's quite simple. Videoverse isn't really like that. Like, most of it is in this Miiverse-like interface. And there's a lot of like different screens, there's a lot of different messaging systems, there's like the forums, there's the private chat. All of these things had like messages arriving at like different times. So having that was quite a challenge. Oh, the main character is called Emmett. If he is like typing away to a friend and then he'll see like a message pop in from someone else, making sure that timing worked really well with the story. Oh, you can't jump ahead to the next bit too soon or skip something by accident. Things like that were really difficult. It's also just trying to make the world feel very believable, that there were enough people on there like talking and commenting and making it feel like it's alive. That was a lot of like kind of time and effort to try and pull that off, and sometimes I worry I didn't quite manage it, but I think because it's quite a short story and each time you're in Videoverse is generally like a short 10-15 minute session. Every time you logged in, it was always changing and it was always different. So I think it worked well in the limitations in the end. But yeah, like just building that system, I think, was the biggest challenge.
I really love the UI and design of the hardware in the game, with the highlight, of course, being the Shark, the console you use in the game. I'm curious about the inspirations for the design of the console. Did you land on this immediately, or was there a lot of trial and error in making the Shark come to life?
Yeah, so there was a lot of error at the start, to be honest, because the original design was like very much the Nintendo DS. It was like a proper handheld, and Emmett would use it in loads of different rooms in the house. And it was really silly of me. I hadn't quite nailed down which era I wanted to write the story in at first. And I thought I wasn't a teenager when Miiverse was out. I was a lot older. And my experiences that I was writing from were back in 2003. So I'm like, I have to make it earlier, but Wi-Fi wasn't really a thing in 2003. Everyone was still using like Ethernet cables. It's, I've got to have to redesign this system to be like bigger. It needs to be more like a laptop, or I was looking at the Sega Dreamcast, other consoles that had like internet accessibility back then. And yeah, so I had to like redesign it completely and just started looking at lots of strange consoles from the 90s, like things like the Sega Pico. There were a lot of like different strange devices, and I think that time, especially like the 90s, was very experimental. So I just tried to be a little bit more wacky with some of the concepts that I was coming up with. The important thing was that it needed to have internet access and a touchpad and a camera. But I didn't want it to be a game set on like a computer, because it was meant to be about video games and our love of them, and also like describe it as an alternate Nintendo timeline. That's the way I like to see it anyway.
I am thinking, if this came out in 2003, would this just be the most revolutionary device the world has ever seen? Granted, the Dreamcast could do a lot of this to an extent, but the hybrid console / computer / social network, that would have definitely made waves. And I gotta know, what is the best theme? For me, I'm partial to Sandy Beach, the blue and yellow one.
Yeah, I used to really like that one when I was testing. Originally, I used to use Sandy Beach a lot. But then strangely, I moved on to, I think it's called Coral. I have different names for them, like in the code, there's something else. I can't remember if the final name is Coral, but it's the red one. And I'm quite a fan of the retro one, which the Game Boy-like one, the kind of green one. That's quite nice on the eyes. It's nice to have had something that really looked more retro like that. But yeah, like adding the themes was a lot of fun, and people can like mix it up and discover different ones throughout the game.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the tech showcase in the game, but obviously what drives the game is the characters and their relationships. Was the main character Emmett based on anyone you know, or perhaps even yourself?
I feel like he is a little bit, he's quite like me. I did originally design him to be a bit more kind of extroverted, But I think he ended up being like a bit more sensitive and a little bit more anxious, more like me, which, yeah, wasn't the initial idea. But I see Emmett and Vivi in particular, they're like, there's a lot of me in both of them. I think Emmett is also a bit more like my husband. He's very kind and sensitive and considerate. I feel like Emmett is like the better sides of both of us. And Vivi, she does remind me of some of her family members, but she also is the closest to me with what happened to her. So yeah, there's quite a lot of like me and people I know in all of the characters, really. Yeah.
I definitely saw a lot of myself in Emmett. I was on gaming forums, I was messaging friends on AIM, so I am perfectly in the nostalgia Venn diagram the game creates. Now, we won't get too much into spoilers, but one of the most compelling storylines is between Emmett, a veteran user of Videoverse, who is an aspiring artist, and Vivi, a new user who impresses Emmett with their phenomenal art. Was the storyline based on something you experienced, or what was your main inspiration behind it?
It was, so I was an inspiring artist as well, like Emmett. And he, actually, I don't want to spoil the game, but it's something that like stays with him. And I had a lot of my online experience when I was really around that age was DeviantArt. And I would draw pictures of anime fan art or video game fan art and upload it. And it was like, it wasn't quite a social network, but people would comment or like it or favorite it. It was just a really nice place for an artist to get better with their skills, get feedback, make friends as well. Like I made some really nice friends and I don't know where they've gone now. And I still sometimes think about that. We've lost touch. But yeah, this feeling of making friends through art or through a game that you love is, I think it's quite, I don't want to say universal, but it's quite a common thing that I think a lot of us have gone through, especially people that like video games or drawing online or whatever. We do make a lot of friends online. So it is something that I've had in my past. Their particular relationship isn't one necessarily that I've had in my life, but there are definitely lots of elements of myself in there, yeah.
I think the game touches on a lot of feelings that are so specific and really only experienced by people who are in these types of online communities. I also really enjoyed how the dread of Videoverse possibly shutting down was handled in the game. Because when you're young and you're part of an online community, or even just have a gaming console, you think, this will last forever. Oh wait, there's a new gaming console? I can't afford that. What am I going to do? Am I going to lose my friends? And this is basically what happened to Miiverse. Was the fate of Videoverse in the game inspired by what happened to Miiverse, or was there something even more specific in your life?
Yeah, it was mostly Miiverse because I remember when Nintendo announced they were going to end it, I just thought that was really brutal. Did use Miiverse, but not a lot. Like I say, I was a little bit older, but I did really like going on there and seeing drawings people were doing and just finding some people were so creative with this very small pixel art kind of canvas that they had. I love seeing those also show up in games. I thought it was really like funny, but it was a nice way to bring the community together. I generally think Miiverse was just it was strange and quite funny, but it was also just weirdly, I think, wholesome in a way, like just having this social network just for Nintendo. And I remember just feeling really sad for mostly the kids and the teenagers that would have been spending way more time on there. It reminded me of friends on DeviantArt that I'd lost, or I was a big World of Warcraft player, so when guilds would disband, or in one case the server shut down that I was on because it was so underpopulated, and everyone had to disperse and go somewhere else. And it just brought all that back when I saw this. So I think it was like 2017 when Miiverse closed. And yeah, so that's quite recent, but I just really felt so dramatic and no one really talked about it that much. People seemed very thankful, thank you Miiverse, and there were lots of lovely posts. But I just thought there must be a grief of people that really liked this that now don't have it in their lives.
Do you think people are eventually going to be nostalgic about the current state of online gaming communities in the future? 20 years from now, can you see a Videoverse-esque game about modern-day Twitter or Discord?
Yeah, I don't know. I think over time, social networks are just getting more toxic. And I think a big part of that is just our general political climate. What's happened with Twitter and X is really sad. And again, I've lost a lot of friends because I'm not on there anymore and they're not on there anymore. And some people moved to Blue Sky, but a lot of people didn't, and they've just gone. I think our attitudes just towards the internet are changing. I think a lot of people are choosing to log off now. I find myself not as online as I was even just a year ago. I don't tend to even play online games that much anymore. I only really play Mario Kart, and I definitely don't talk to anyone. But that's my personal life. There is a good chance that there will be a young game developer out there who's playing, I don't know, maybe Roblox right now or something, and thinks it's incredible and wants to make a game about that. I'm sure we'll probably see something. With Videoverse, I really tried to show the good and the bad of the internet. There are ugly sides, but generally it's a net positive in Videoverse that these children were able to find friendships and look after each other and care about each other. Because I still stand by that the internet is very good for marginalised or disabled people who can't find community in their real life. But yeah, I just think the internet's just in a very strange place right now, so I'm not really sure. Yeah.
It recently hit consoles a few months ago, including Nintendo Switch. I'm always fascinated by this process, and I've had several devs on my show talk about porting games over to the hardware. What was your experience like getting the game from PC to the Switch?
Yeah, so I worked with Ratalaika Games on the port, and they ported One Night Stand, which was my previous game, to consoles as well. So working with them is relatively easy. I just send them the game, they do all the magic, getting it working on all the different console systems, and I have to quality check it, test it on my dev kit, make sure the kind of controller, the buttons all work. It can be quite tricky, especially with Videoverse in particular, getting the buttons right, because it's very much a game designed for a touchscreen or a mouse. And that's not too bad on Nintendo Switch, because you can use the touchscreen, which is really nice. But if you're playing it docked, or if you're on PlayStation or Xbox, you've only got the controller. So having that kind of desktop-like experience, a social network, with a controller can be quite tricky. That was a bit of a challenge with this one. But on the plus side, I'd already been working on fixing that for Steam Deck. So a month after the initial launch, I'd already updated it with Steam Deck compatibility, button controls. You can use the shoulder buttons to switch between pages, all that kind of stuff. There's also, on console, you have the option to use the button controls, or you can click the left stick in and switch to on-screen cursor mode as well. So I've tried to add as many options as possible, but it's still strange. I would love to, if I could get a dev kit for Switch 2, I'd really love to add the mouse controls, because I think that would be perfect. Yeah.
Also, the game is available in Japanese. What was that process like, and has there been any notable feedback from Japanese gamers? The online communities showcased in the game are very much a Western thing despite being centered around Japanese games. So I'm curious how they would respond to this type of game.
Yeah. First off, again, Ratalaika handled the translation as well, which was really cool of them. But I was very concerned because it's, like you say, it's very kind of Eurocentric. We're talking about these kids from Germany and the UK really loving this Japanese RPG called Feudal Fantasy. And there's a lot of Western memes in there, things that Japanese audience might not understand. So even though I had this direct kind of translation, I was just a bit worried, maybe this isn't hitting all the beats that it should. So I spoke to a few of my friends. I was like, please, could you play test it in Japanese? Because my Japanese is really not very good at all. But they played it and they were like, yeah, some of this isn't quite making sense. And there's some references that people just wouldn't understand. There are still a lot of references in there that There's a lot of Simpson jokes, for example, which in the West is quite well known, but in Japan is really very niche. So some of those are still in there, but I did try to just add some references where I could that Japanese people would understand. So some jokes and things were changed, some drawings were different in the Japanese version, and I just really tried to work with the feedback that I was getting from the playtesters on this. And they were suggesting other things that I could add, references that I don't understand. So then that was quite strange. I'm trusting you on this, that this is what I should be doing. But regards to feedback, Videoverse was in Weekly Famitsu in December, and it won a Famitsu Gold. So I was really happy with that. And some of the feedback was that they were saying it was really nice to see the influence that a Japanese game had on these kids in Europe and how they bonded over it. And that was something that I guess I just hadn't seen from the other point of view. I grew up loving Final Fantasy, and I would talk with other English speakers about Final Fantasy. Some of them were American and some of them were British. But I'd never thought of, what would a Japanese person think watching us talking about Final Fantasy? Would they find it strange or cute? Or so I got to see that from the review, which was quite nice. But yeah, it generally seems quite positive. I just think it does feel quite foreign to Japanese people. So some people like it and maybe some people don't quite get it. It's just very interesting because it's a kind of cultural aspect I didn't really think of. I thought it would be an easy game to translate, and it wasn't.
Okay, final question. Since Videoverse is an original video game, of course, it is eligible for Smash Brothers. Sakurai contacts you. What from Videoverse are you putting into Smash?
That's a good question. I would want to put in Uncle from Kinmoku. I really like his mask. I've wanted to make that myself and use it for events and things. But yeah, I think he has this kind of chaotic, good energy. And I think he'd be quite vicious with his words. But yeah, it's a difficult question to answer because Videoverse is not a very aggressive game.
That was a look at Videoverse, available now on consoles such as Nintendo Switch and PC. Now, you are also working on a new game. Can you tell us anything about that, or is it top secret? Is it Videoverse 2?
It is quite top secret, I'm afraid, but I do plan on announcing it very soon, hopefully in the next couple of months. But I can share that it is going to be another visual novel, and I do think it has some of my best artwork to date. I think I'm really proud of the artwork with this one, and I think that's its strongest point. So yeah, please look forward to that.
Okay, well, we can all look forward to that game, but until then, Lucy, you're actually going to stay on as we chat about the Capcom Creations exhibit in Tokyo that you also recently visited. Okay, the music has played and we are now in the feature section, as we're going to talk about Capcom Creations moving hearts across the globe, the huge new Capcom exhibit happening right now in Tokyo. Lucy, you don't live in Tokyo, but you were able to visit it. Tell me how you ended up discovering and visiting the exhibit in the first place.
Yeah, so I was taking a vacation over the Christmas period in Japan, and I think it was actually on my last day. My husband said, there's this Capcom exhibition, and we didn't know what to do. It was our last day. And I was like, that sounds really nice. We'll get away from the shops or running around like crazy people like we always do on the last day of the trip.
For me, I heard this exhibit was happening in Osaka last year, and I'm in Tokyo and thought, I can't go to that, I guess. And people were messaging me asking, are you going to cover this on the podcast? Because apparently it was quite good and highly recommended. But lo and behold, it was finally announced that it was coming to Tokyo, and listeners, you still have until February 22nd to check it out. So Lucy, can you give us the basics? What is the Capcom Creations exhibit?
Yeah, so when you walk in, you have this big wall with all the characters, like Capcom characters, walking down it, and you go round the corner, and there is a showcase of all their games, the timeline, the history. They've got all the box art, the cartridges, posters. it felt, at the beginning, it felt a lot like the Nintendo Museum. Like, they are very proud of their work and they're showcasing it. But the further you go in, it shows more about the game development process, which I thought was really cool. So I make visual novels. So seeing this kind of design process for fighting games like Street Fighter or Mega Man, and they're 3D games as well, it was just really nice to see these really clear visual representations. For example, they went back to Mega Man and looked at the pixel art limitations that they had on the NES, and how would they achieve transparency or certain effects with pixel art. And they also explained how hitboxes were used. I don't think I've seen an exhibition that kind of went into that detail, and I appreciated it as a game developer who doesn't make games like that. But I imagine that if you only played games and you never made them and you didn't really understand, I still think this would be a great exhibition to understand, the detail and how much goes into games.
Yes, it's being held at the Creative Museum Tokyo, a place I admittedly have never visited before that's near Tokyo Station. And I'm really interested to hear your perspective as a dev, since the exhibit is not just about Capcom's history, but offers a peek behind the scenes at how they develop games. Now, you make pixel art, and as you mentioned, they do get deep into how they created pixel art back in the NES and SNES era. Was all this new to you, or are you already familiar with these tricks, or what?
No, I was quite surprised by the pixel art, because although I draw pixel art, I only came to pixel art a lot later than when it was being used in games. I was drawing pixel art in the 2000s, so it was very different. And here it was seeing the limitations on the NES. I thought, I didn't really think about that. I should have thought about that. I made Videoverse, for example. I had color limitations on that system. But for some reason, when I was reading it here, I was oh, yeah, I didn't quite think of that. And the transparency effects and what they were doing with Street Fighter as well, that was really cool. Again, I should have thought about that, but didn't. And I guess it's just because I wasn't working on games back in the 90s with these very old systems. On the flip side, I don't make 3D games, but they had, a bit further into the exhibition, they had figures of Chun-Li and Dante. And then they were projecting wireframe and normal maps and color maps. And I think they had an environment, this little world map that they did that with as well. And I just thought that was just a really nice way to show to people that maybe don't make 3D models, what goes into this and what all these things are for. And I really appreciated that. I don't make 3D games, but I have dabbled in 3D before. And it was just a really creative way to show this to people that may not know about it.
Did you do the pixel art challenge? I drew a pink pixel Mega Man.
No, I didn't. I think I had that kind of end of holiday rush, and I was I do pixel art at home, so I kind of walked on. But I did play around with the sound effects, and also they had, remembering it more now, they had a face mapping, and you could become the characters and change your face. So I was a few characters there. I tried a few of them out. I liked the cat from Monster Hunter. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, there were these sections where it would scan you in real time, and then your movements would be projected onto the character. Like you, I did pick the Palico from Monster Hunter for the face tracking. It scans your face and the character mimics it. And I was thinking, since it's a cat, it will be a little janky, but I was incredibly impressed by how every single twitch or slight motion was portrayed on the cat. But I think my favorite behind the scenes thing was the videos showcasing the Foley recordings, how they recorded the sounds from the games.
I know. I love watching Foley artists, and I did do a bit of that at university. We had to record our own sound effects. It surprised me at the time, but I really loved it. It was so much fun. So it was really nice to watch those videos.
It's truly mind-blowing how they did this. Like the Knight Armor from Monster Hunter, they just shake a backpack, and that's supposed to be the sound of this heavy armor clanking around. And the best one is the fish flopping around, which is just a guy slapping his arms. It's so funny to see how just simply these sounds are made, yet they have a big impact on the game.
Yeah.
And for me, I loved the concept art. I'm not sure if this is a lot of never before seen stuff, but at least stuff I've never seen before. It is really incredible to see these major franchises that just started on graph paper. Like the planning document for Mega Man, it starts with a single sheet of paper that just says Rockman on it.
I really liked seeing the graph paper everywhere, and I actually bought one of the notepads with the Capcom graph paper, because I thought when I do pixel art in future, I'm going to try drawing it on this Capcom paper. But yeah, no, I do tend to sketch quite a lot, but my sketches are much messier than Capcom's. I was so impressed when I was walking around, particularly with they call it like the Capcom anatomy. So even like the bodies the muscles have they're just different than typical people. And I just found that it was so fascinating how they're trying to pass on this anatomy style, like down to like future artists at the company. I was like blown away. I was like, wow, these guys I feel like I'm messing around compared to these people. Like I walked away from that bit like, these guys are they're like the best artists in the world. I was very impressed.
Yeah, this was another mind-blowing element of the exhibit. In the section titled The Essence of Capcomness, Character Creation Manual, they showcased a book called Sketchy Anatomical Drawings, which is a manual that Capcom designers use to draw anatomy and to draw muscles. And this is so specific. Like if the character is standing here and they're lifting their right arm up, what do their chest muscles look like? What muscles should you emphasize when they are kneeling? And the fact that so many Capcom artists use this as a reference does help develop a distinct vibe that echoes throughout all their games.
I can understand them wanting to do that because they do have this very unique, distinct style. And it's Capcom as soon as you see it. And when going through that exhibition and seeing behind the scenes, it's, this is why. It starts from the first sketches that they do and just even the muscles of a character. Apart from thinking like, oh, should this character be stocky or tall or are they a bit overweight? I don't really think down to muscle fibers, you know?
I also love to see all the sketches and concept art, especially of the Street Fighter 2 stages. These are, again, drawn on graph paper, but they are much larger than I expected. And I love to see how every little part of the stage was broken down and covered with notes and pencil sketches and eraser marks. It gave me a much better appreciation for how these background elements were designed.
Yeah, I really enjoyed seeing those as well. And again, like I wasn't doing pixel art in the 90s, so seeing it on the graph paper, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. They drew the characters here and then translated that onto the computers. Whereas my generation, my age, we'd just draw the pixel art straight into the computer. Or we could down-res a photo or something like that. It was so cool to see it on graph paper like that, which was why I bought some.
We're jumping around a bit, but I want to go back to the start of the exhibit, which has a big Capcom timeline and showcases their franchise and also a big wall filled with logos. What from this area left an impression?
I think just the sheer amount of Capcom games, because I'm not the biggest like Capcom fan, for example. Like I do like Street Fighter and Ace Attorney, but I don't really play the Resident Evil games or Monster Hunter. But seeing just how many games there were and how a lot of them split off from, oh, that was going to be Resident Evil, but it didn't quite work out. And then it became Devil May Cry and all this kind of stuff like that. Oh, they made loads of games from quote unquote unsuccessful games. I thought I should have known that. And it was just nice to walk in there and really be presented with it. Oh yeah, they did do that. And yeah, like they've been like in the industry for such a long time as well. It just made me like, by the end of the whole thing, like really respect them and think, yeah, I should play more Capcom. And yeah, I was just very impressed.
I love the showcase of the franchises and specifically how they all influenced and branched off from each other. Like you have Resident Evil, and then from that tree you have 3 distinct subcategories: Dinosaur, Samurai, and Stylish, which are Dino Crisis, Onimusha, and Devil May Cry, respectively. And it was very funny to see how they categorized all these spin-offs. Like Mega Man X and Zero are in the, quote, mature themes branch of the Mega Man tree. This section also had the quote-unquote real props from the games, like Ryu's gi or the gavel from the Ace Attorney movie. And I was amazed that they had the original calligraphy writing for the Onimusha logo. Like the thing they scanned to make the logo, they have the original writing on display. And there was also a huge wall filled with a lot of Capcom art blown up on canvases. Did anything here stick out?
I think I had seen a lot of them before, but I am really quite amazed seeing the differences between the Japanese box art and the Western box art. So they had the Western Mega Man stuff, which I always find really funny.
Yeah, Japan will never let us live that down.
Yeah, it is weird. I think I just really loved seeing all the big posters, really. They're just so striking. Some of the Final Fight stuff with the Street Fighter 2. It's just really nice. They also had, I think there was an Otome game there that they had, but I have seen that box art before and I'm like, it is so stunning. I have to check this game out. So yeah, I don't know, just amazed by all of it, really. Did you have any particular pieces that you liked?
I was glad they had a lot more obscure stuff on display. Of course, there's Street Fighter art, but also stuff here from Red Earth as well, which I really like. Forgotten Worlds, and many other titles that often don't get a lot of love. You can see them on canvas art here. Also, I really liked how they had a lot of the games on display, and these weren't just Mega Man on NES. For example, they had the 3DO version of Super Street Fighter 2 on display. I legit had no idea there was even a 3DO version of this. They also had the Saturn version of Street Fighter Alpha, the N64 version of Mega Man Legends, so I like that they went out of their way to highlight these more underplayed versions of some of their classic games. Oh, and the Steel Battalion controller was there, so it was always fun to see that. And jumping around a bit more, there was a cool Resident Evil section that highlighted all the different perspectives, the fixed camera and the first-person mode, and how they did it. And there was also a Resident Evil themed walkthrough area. Did you go in there?
Yeah, so they give you a flashlight, and I think maybe that was the most disappointing part. It was nice that they did it, but it was just so short. But yeah, you flash it around in this dark corridor and then see zombies or things trying to break out. I thought it was quite good. I'm a big wimp when it comes to horror games or zombies or anything. So I was a bit scared to go in, but it turned out to be fine. It really wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I'm a huge wimp when it comes to scary games, and I was worried about this area. I thought, is somebody just going to pop out and grab me? But no, you just get a flashlight and you go into this dark section, and the light shows the projection mapping of the zombies.
Yeah.
But they are fairly low res and flat, but the tech and how they were revealed with the flashlight was impressive. Did you see the liquor on the roof?
Yes, yeah. I don't know why it wasn't scary, but yeah, I find the games much more terrifying.
And there were also some photo ops of the train from Final Fight and the Ace Attorney courtroom. Did you take any pictures here?
Yes, I took photos in both of them. The Ace Attorney one in particular was really fun because they had props, the objection sign, and I slammed both of my fists down and posed just like Phoenix would. Yeah, that was really cute that they dispersed the exhibit with these little photo bits and just made it fun along the way. It wasn't all just info dumping on you.
Also in that room were interviews with people who worked on various Capcom franchises, like the director of Monster Hunter Wilds and the sound engineer of Street Fighter 6 and so on. Yeah. These were interesting inclusions, but I did feel that who is going to just stand here and watch a full interview?
Yeah, I did feel a bit like that. I remember being my Japanese isn't good enough to really understand what people are saying, so I'm going to skip this. I thought it was nice that they were there. Oh, you've seen all the things we've made and all the things we're proud of and how we've done it. And now it's the people behind it at the end. I thought that was really nice. But it was a lot of interviews. There was I think it was most of the directors for almost all of their franchises. And it was a wall of interviews. And yeah, you're right in that I can't imagine someone listening to every single one because you'd probably be there all day.
And right before the gift shops, there was an area where you could draw a little sketch and they would put it on display. But on display were also sketches from many of Capcom's artists, including Akiman, Kinu Nishimura, who is maybe the greatest game artist of all time. The Kunitsugami artist also had one on display. Did you draw anything here?
Whenever I'm in Japan and I see these kind of walls at the end that people have drawn, I'm always so amazed by how good their art is. Like, intimidated. I was like, oh yeah, I'll draw something. And then I'm like, oh, forget it. I'll leave it to them. They're clearly much better at this.
And yes, we got to talk about the gift shop, which was quite expensive and had a lot of exclusive merch. Did you pick up anything?
I did also just get the exhibition book because I enjoyed it so much. And I did take some photos going around, but I wanted to really remember every part of it, particularly the anatomy. I think that was the thing that I walked away most amazed about. And also, I think we forgot to mention it, but Dante's jacket as well was a prop that they used for the 3D model, which I just thought was really cool that they had that there. And so yeah, I bought the book so I could remember all this. And yeah, like it's a nice like memorabilia as well. I did the same in the Nintendo Museum. They had a new book that they brought out, so I bought that as well. And then that way I don't have to like just take photos constantly going around. Yeah.
I got some clear files, these cheap plastic folders. And what was cool about these is that it had the dev documents we talked about earlier printed on the folder. So these Street Fighter II planning pages were on the folder, which is a very fun, deep cut piece of gaming merch. Now, outside of the exhibit, a cafe was having a collab menu. Did you eat any of the Capcom food at this cafe?
No, I didn't actually. You know what? I completely missed that. To be fair, like I'm not a huge fan of themed cafes because I have food intolerances, so I can't eat at them. But yeah, generally it's very fun or cute, but the food is generally not great. So I just omit them, I guess.
Normally I'm up for this, but all the food was unappetizing looking and quite expensive, at least 3,000 yen per person. But I did get a Hadoken churro for takeout. And listeners, if you don't know what a churro is, it's like a long donut. And at the end was some blue frosting. And the holder it came in looked like Ryu from Street Fighter 2. So it looks like he's shooting out a Hadoken churro. And to be honest, if you're comparing Disneyland churros to this churro, Disneyland, it comes out on top. But it was at least a fun thing to take a photo of.
Yeah.
So Lucy, Capcom Creations, did it live up to your expectations?
I think it exceeded them because it was my husband that is the big Capcom fan. And I was like, I like a few games, let's go. But it really blew me away and it really inspired me, particularly with the pixel art and with their character designs and how they have like their certain styles. And I finished wanting to play more Capcom games and just really in awe and inspired by it all. So yeah, it definitely exceeded my expectations for sure.
I've been to many gaming exhibits in Tokyo, and I have to say this is easily one of the best. It touched on a lot of really fascinating elements of Capcom's history and also how they made games. It did a great job in really conveying the quote-unquote Capcomness many of their games possessed. You do walk away thinking, hey, nobody quite makes games like them. And there was a great balance between interactivity and the more passive exhibit experience where you are just taking in all their history. And I think if you're a Capcom fan, you'll definitely take a lot away from it. But even if you don't know anything about Capcom, you will have a lot of appreciation for the things on display. And it's in Tokyo until February 22nd, so listeners, check it out. But in the meantime, Lucy, where can people find you?
Yeah, the best place to find me these days is on Blue Sky. I'm Kinmoku on Blue Sky. I'm also on Mastodon and Instagram and TikTok, but Blue Sky is the main one for me. I also have a newsletter on kinmoku.games, which is the best place to stay up to date and not miss any of my announcements.
Great. And everything will be in the podcast description. So listeners, check it out and check out Videoverse, which is on Switch and many other platforms right now. Lucy Blundell, once again, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Where do I even begin? To be honest, the most important news is that Poke Park Kanto is now open in Yomiuri Land. If you want to go, you can buy tickets online, but you got to buy them 2 months ahead of time. I haven't got my tickets yet, despite applying for a lottery and then never hearing back, but it is easily my most anticipated gaming place I want to visit. I will absolutely report back and feature it on the podcast in a big way once I head over there. But for non-Tokyo news, man, Nintendo has been busy. I think the last piece of news I talked about was the Bella Bell Park overview, and there's been quite a lot since then. There were literally 3 directs. Let's look at Nintendo Direct Partner Showcase. There's been a lot of discussion about this show, but let me say this. Partners were showcased. You can't deny that. Not a barn burner when it came to new announcements. I'm trying to think about what the biggest announcement was, and honestly, nothing really sticks out as, wow, that was a show stealer. That said, I do think there is a difference between what's in the Direct and what else is coming out these next few months on Switch 2. Let's go through it, and okay, I'm going to be skipping some games. I'm sorry. Let's find out which games get my seal of approval, aka which games at least made me go, Orbitals started the show and undoubtedly looks like a great co-op experience. Sadly, I'm probably not going to play this since my wife and I are often on different schedules, so it's hard to grab her and say, hey, let's play this co-op game from start to finish. But I'm happy for those who can. Then we got Paranormasight: The Mermaid's Curse, which is also coming out in February. That first game is highly regarded, and it's always sitting in my wish list, waiting for me to snatch it up. One day I will do it, I swear. Captain Tsubasa 2, then Tokyo Scramble from the Ender Lilies team. It's a stealth/survival horror game where you are trying to escape monsters from the Tokyo underground. Not my type of game, but it is an interesting idea. And one thing I thought was genius is that there's a mode where each player controls a different aspect of the same character. Like one person moves the character, another person moves the camera, and another person can use items. This is prime streamer material. I definitely want to see somebody like Giant Bomb play it this way. Valheim is also coming to Switch 2, and while ugly, it is definitely a game a lot of people love, and I can see it finding an audience on Switch 2. I feel like the survival/crafting audience is on the Switch in large numbers. And we also saw more of The Adventures of Elliot, which hits in July. I was a little cold on this at first, but the different era mechanic is pretty intriguing. Is this an Oracle of Ages like? It doesn't seem like you can just swap eras on the fly, but I have always loved this concept of visiting the same place across different time periods in games. And the first thing that really made me perk up, Super Bomberman Collection, which includes the 5 Super Bomberman games from the SNES, including ones hitting the West for the first time ever. And some of the Famicom Bomberman games are also included. I've always wanted a big Bomberman collection, and this is at least a step in that direction. Ideally, you have something with Saturn Bomberman, with the TurboGrafx Bomberman games, with Wario Blast, but those could be coming in the future. I will say it's priced a bit higher than I expected. The Switch 2 version is 3,300 yen in Japan. I don't know if I'm going to tear through 5 Bomberman games right now, though, but it's there if I do ever get that feeling. And speaking of collections, a Japanese Direct exclusive, we are getting a Goemon collection with 13 games spanning Famicom, Super Famicom, and the Game Boy. Project Goemon, if you are listening to this, check your DMs around the time this game comes out, because I want to talk. Western release? It doesn't seem likely. One Goemon game probably has more text than every Super Bomberman game combined, so don't get your hopes up just yet. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, June. Looks great. Many people were worried that the open world structure of this game wouldn't work well on Switch 2, but I saw it with my own eyes and it looks fantastic. And it is coming way quicker than I expected, which makes me think that the third game is pretty close. Final Fantasy VII, one of the best games ever made, but I never picked up Remake. I've played the demo on PS4, on Switch 2, but just never took the plunge despite many Final Fantasy VII fans loving it. I am still just a little flustered by the concept of taking one game and stretching it out into 3 games. Playing Remake honestly kind of feels like homework, and I'm much more interested in just jumping into Rebirth. This might be sacrilegious, but I do have that temptation. Either way, I'm glad that a game that looks like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth runs smoothly on Switch 2. And speaking of AAA games that run smoothly on Switch 2, I'll try to check out the demo, but impressions seem really positive, and again, this is a AAA PS5 game that is coming day and date to Switch 2. Is that not crazy to anybody else? Have we all been desensitized? Other stuff, Turok Origins. I'm just glad somebody somewhere is making a Turok game. More Japanese games, Kyoto Xanadu, Digimon Story Time Stranger, and Grand Blue Fantasy Relink Endless Ragnarok is coming this July. I don't know if I want a Ragnarok to be endless, but I have been fascinated by this game for a long time. It's based off of Grand Blue Fantasy, one of the most popular mobile gacha RPGs in Japan, and arguably the example of the genre. The modern gacha RPGs are in Grand Blue Fantasy's shadow. And Relink was supposed to be Side Games' big swing into the console sphere, and it was in development for years and years and years. It came out, got pretty good reviews, but it didn't seem to really make a huge impression. It was not some Expedition 33 level smash hit. But I always thought that the presentation and gameplay looked absolutely stellar, so I'm really interested in picking this game up on Switch 2. Side Games, by the way, Nintendo owns 5% of them. So if you really think about it, this is kind of a Nintendo first-party game. Kind of, if you think about it hard enough. At least 5% of it is. And another game I am absolutely picking up, Monster Hunter Stories 3. I love 2, one of the best JRPGs on Switch, and I was impressed by what I played of the game at TGS. Apparently the Switch 2 demo is a little rough, which is odd because playing it portably at TGS, it ran very smoothly and looked great minus some pop-in. So I wonder what's up with the demo, or if the area highlighted is just really intensive. But even if it doesn't run as good as it should, it is high on my must-play list. Hamster showed up and put on their big boy pants. We are getting console archives, remastered ports of console games. What consoles? Who knows? It doesn't matter. Here's cool borders. But so far, it seems mostly like NES and PlayStation titles. I wonder how far they will go. Are we getting Saturn? N64? PS2? It really does make me feel that any game could just randomly come out at any moment. I mean, the first game they showed off was Doraemon on the Famicom. If I told you Hamster is releasing console games, and you have 10,000 guesses, will you eventually land on Doraemon on the Famicom? In Japan, they've also featured UFO A Day in the Life, which is one of the 3 Love Delete games. English version? I don't know. I mean, does Hamster normally release games solely in one region? How many Arcade Archives games were region exclusive? But console games are a lot different, so maybe they will start the trend of not releasing everything everywhere. Or maybe they will just release these games in all regions untranslated and say, play at your own peril. Egg Console already does that. More stuff. Another Eden begins, and you know what else also is beginning? Coldcept. Coldcept begins a brand new game in the franchise, and Coldcept the First, which is a remaster of the original title, are coming to Switch and Switch 2 on July 15th. This franchise has long been dormant, and I have featured it on the podcast, so go listen to that episode if you want to know everything about this franchise that has a very strong Nintendo connection. It seems to be developed by Neos Corporation. Where's Omiyasoft? Are they okay? Coldcept Central, if you are also listening to this episode, please check your DMs around July. Also, come on now. You have one game called Begins and one game called The First. Did nobody check this? Shadow Tactics, Blades of the Shogun. This was a legit surprising one, mostly because the developer shut down recently. It originally came out on Windows in 2016, but it did just get a PS5 port last year, and now it's on Switch 2 in March. I've always thought this game looked really fascinating. It's, well, a samurai strategy game. Enough said, I'm sold. Resident Evil Requiem is back again. I played this at TGS and it was pretty much perfect. Yes, the textures are not as good as the PS5 version, but the lighting and the consistent frame rate was legit shocking. I was amazed Switch 2 could pull this off. If you plan on picking this up on Switch 2 instead of PS5, I don't think you will be disappointed. And like with Pragmata, it's kind of crazy that we are getting a brand new AAA numbered Resident Evil game day one. Last segment, Bethesda is back. Back with old games. Fallout 4, Indiana Jones, and Oblivion Remastered are all coming to Switch soon. Fallout 4 is this month, and Indiana Jones is in May. And there were a shocking amount of games that are out in like a few days. Tokyo Scramble, Paranormal Site, those are also February. Is nobody scared of Mario Tennis? Now, should you end a direct with Oblivion Remastered? No, of course not. But I do think there is this weird disconnect between the perception of the Switch 2's library that is reinforced by these types of directs versus what is actually coming out and playable. If you just look at the direct, you might think, slim pickings, where are the new games? But we just got Dragon Quest VII remastered 2 days ago. Which yes, it's an old game, but it is a completely new remake. Yakuza Kiwami 3 is also coming out, which again, yes, is a new old game, but it is also coming out day one as the PS5 and PC versions. Resident Evil 9 is day one, as is Pragmata, as is 007 First Light, which didn't show up here somehow. And Lego Batman, which is going to be a big Switch 2 game, was also missing, but that is coming out. I think if Capcom didn't announce Pragmata for Switch 2 until this showcase and saved it for last, people would be like, whoa, what an insane get for the system. But now it's a known quantity, strangely enough. Yeah, Capcom is releasing a big new IP on Switch 2 day and date with the PS5 and PC version. Yawn. I'm not yawning, guys. My mouth is closed. Now, it is completely fair to judge the Direct solely based on what was in it, as a piece of media in a vacuum, but if you look outside of the Direct box, I feel Switch 2 has a pretty solid Q1 filled with a lot of new first-party games, new third-party games, and yes, some old ports and collections. which we love. We love collections. I get it though. People are concerned about Elden Ring. People want Expedition 33, Red Dead Redemption 2, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Where's Baldur's Gate 3? Are these games coming to Switch 2? Where was Dustbloods? I get it. I understand. But let's look at the whole calendar. Let's realize that not every game in the Direct is everything that's coming out. Let's also realize that not everyone has played every game the moment it came out. If you go in with that attitude, you will come out understanding, okay, this Direct didn't really hit for me personally, but there's still plenty of games coming out, some that weren't even in the Direct. Caves of Cod, February 16th, put it on your calendar. And speaking of games that weren't in this Direct, Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. It got its own Direct and is coming out on April 16th. So our first April game. The incredibly deep customization is what really stood out. People are going to have a wild time customizing their islands, their clothing, their pets, their faces. But sadly, we won't be able to share any of that since Nintendo has implemented some very strict sharing measures. You won't be able to upload screenshots from your Switch app and then post them online. You gotta pull that SD Express card out and then upload it to your computer. There also doesn't seem to be any sort of online sharing functionality like how you can search for patterns in Animal Crossing. And no way to share Miis either. I'm fine with just making Miis of my family, but when it comes to putting in Mario and Darth Vader onto my island, I kind of just want to scan a QR code and upload them automatically. Maybe there will be some ham-fisted roundabout way to do that, like a special website or something, but having to handcraft each individual Mii isn't for everybody. But that aside, the game does look really content-rich, and if you're into design and customization, there's more than enough to do here. I expect this will be a huge seller as well. There's absolutely a subset of people who only play Tomodachi Life and have been waiting for this game forever. Don't be surprised if this is Nintendo's best-selling Q1 game in the long run. Also, the date is interesting. We are still trying to figure out if Nintendo is willing to double up months with both a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 game. They did do that in October with Galaxy and Pokemon, and I think Yoshi is likely an April release due to the movie. So I can see Yoshi hitting early April and Tomodachi Life hitting mid-April. I expect Rhythm Heaven will also share a month with another Switch 2 game, maybe Fire Emblem, who knows. So is May Rhythm Heaven and Fire Emblem? We still don't really have a big picture beyond April, so I do kind of wonder if there's going to be a general direct, maybe in a few weeks or maybe in early March, to fill out at least the April, May, June dates. And yes, the final direct, the Super Mario Galaxy movie got a direct. Just a trailer, but obviously I'm excited to see Birdo and Mouser on the big screen. Even Claw Grip was there. Now that's a deep cut. I'm trying to piece together the plot of the movie, and it seems like it could be pretty messy for something that is going to top out at 90-ish minutes. You've got Mario and Luigi adventuring with Yoshi. Peach is adventuring with Toad. Rosalina has to meet up with some group to drive the story along, and will likely be against Bowser Jr. somehow, who is the new main antagonist. But you can't forget about Bowser either. And Peach goes to some Super Mario Bros. 2 inspired place and fights a bunch of ninjas. There's Baby Mario and Luigi. I'm not sure how all this is supposed to coalesce, but the good thing about being Movie 2 is that you are now past the origin stuff, and you can focus on just being a big, silly adventure. But it is going to be tough to balance all these characters. Like, is Yoshi or Rosalina going to have more screen time? Is Yoshi going to meet Rosalina? Is Peach going to meet Yoshi? What's going to happen? And sadly, it was confirmed that this is coming to Japan 3 weeks later than the West, just like the first movie. So, no spoilers, please. But here's my prediction. Wario is teased in the post-credits. There's going to be some sign that says Mario on it, the M will come loose, and then we'll flip over to a W. Lock in that prediction right now. Speaking of incredible predictions, a few episodes ago was my Nintendo in 2026 prediction episode. And one of them, go back and check if you don't believe me, one of my predictions is that Nintendo would put out canceled games on NSO, and I specifically called out Dragon Hopper on the Virtual Boy by Intelligent Systems. A desperate half-court shot. But what's this? Nothing but net. Nintendo revealed in their Virtual Boy overview trailer that the never-before-released Dragon Hopper, aka D-Hopper now, and Zero Racers are coming to NSO, as I willed it. This is fantastic news. This is legit gaming history at your fingertips. Nintendo has been good with releasing Japanese games in the West for the first time ever via NSO, but they've taken it to another level here. Sound fantasy on NSO? It's getting likely. As for the overview, yep, that's the Virtual Boy. Now, obviously, I have already bought the shell and I am patiently waiting for it. And yes, I will be covering it on the podcast. One of the more interesting additions is that you can now change the colors from red and black to other color schemes, just like Videoverse. But for whatever reason, it's not at launch. Also, you have to physically remove the red lens from the shell. Listen, playing these games in a mock Virtual Boy, it's going to be a fun experience. At least fun in an interesting way. But can we just play these all on the TV? Apparently some games would probably need a lot of work due to the way they're programmed, but there's got to be some way. They are in 2D in the trailer. Can't they just be 2D on my TV? Other NSO stuff. Balloon Kid and Yoshi on Game Boy are the latest NSO drops. Not earth-shattering, but Japan does get Balloon Fight GB, which is the color remaster of Balloon Kid that only came out in Japan. So if you want to try out a Japan-only game, it's on NSO right now. And it is the perfect, I don't know what I should talk about on the podcast, is there any NSO type of game? So look forward to my hot Balloon Fight GB discussion in the future. Sales. Nintendo has a lot of them. Switch 1 has passed 155 million units, making it the best-selling Nintendo hardware ever. And well-deserved. I mean, it is the best one. Switch 2 is at 17 million, so it seems likely that it will exceed the yearly target of 19 million. Software is still 10 million under projection, but with the big Q1 titles like Bokopia and Tomodachi Life, I'm sure it will get there. Third-party games like Final Fantasy VII Remake and DQ7 are also moving a lot of units on Switch 2. Pokemon Legends ZA sold 12.3 million via both versions, so a little bit under Arceus' launch. But still, can't really complain about those numbers. That was easily Nintendo's biggest holiday title, and one I expected to be big, Super Mario Galaxy 1+2. Now, sadly, we don't have the packaged version numbers for whatever reason, but the digital sales for both games combined is around 4.7 million units. Now, it's hard to guess the packaged numbers since I assume many people were just like, I'll buy one digitally, but let's say it sold as well, so that's nearly 10 million units, which was in line with my earlier prediction. Again, maybe the packaged version only sold 1 million, but either way, those are pretty solid numbers for a remaster. Everyone is clamoring for a new 3D Mario, but even old 3D Marios can still work as a major Nintendo release. Donkey Kong Bonanza is at 4.25 million, meaning it moved 750k over the holiday season. Not huge numbers to be honest, but I can see it selling well throughout the Switch 2's life. It could have a Luigi's Mansion 3-esque run. But will it be undercut by a new 3D Mario? We will see, but there is a scenario where that helps DKB in the long run. Kirby Air Riders also sold 1.76 million units, with 900k being in Japan alone. This means that it's already surpassed the GameCube game, which sold 1.35 million. Hopefully this game has some legs because it is outstanding. It's slightly under the 10th best-selling Kirby game, so let's see how many slots it moves up. And Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, apparently one SKU didn't reach the 1 million mark, which is why it wasn't reported. However, according to Stephen Totillo, he talked to some Nintendo representative, whoever that is. Maybe it is the new Nintendo of America president. But whoever he talked to, they confirmed that combined, the Switch 1 and Switch 2 versions of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond do exceed 1 million units, which I expect is maybe in line with expectations. Can it leg out to 2 million? Possible, but I think it will float around the 1 million to 2 million mark for quite a while. There was a lot of hubbub about if the Switch 2 sales were disappointing or not this holiday. In the Q&A, Furukawa said that the sales were exceeding expectations in Japan, but slightly lower than expected in the West. Which makes sense considering the US, the biggest market, is undergoing major economic issues right now, and the tariffs are not helping Nintendo's profit margins. He also noticed that their big holiday titles like ZA and Air Riders were more Japan-centric, which resulted in the region picking up Switch 2s faster than other countries. Switch 2 is still the fastest-selling console, rapidly outpacing Switch 1. It took Switch 1 6 more months to hit the Switch 2's current numbers. But there is the issue of the tariffs in Nintendo's largest market, the memory prices increasing, the state of the global economy. All of this is working against Nintendo Switch 2 as a luxury hobby device. Furukawa also notes that they don't want to sell Switch 2 at a loss when viewed globally. So does that mean they were willing to sell it for a loss in some countries as long as it's still profitable worldwide? Like, would they be okay with selling Switch 2 at a loss in the US if Europe and Japan and Australia sales are strong enough to make it profitable? Furukawa does expect Nintendo to achieve their full year earnings forecast, but I am curious to see what their expectations are for year 2. Switch 2 is legitimately an amazing piece of hardware, and the software lineup is strong, although there's still a very loud subset of people who are saying, where's Mario, where's Zelda, where's Smash? But there is a huge amount of high-profile Nintendo and third-party games out for the system and on the horizon. Most of the things that could hamper Switch 2 are kind of outside of their control. As a company, they can really only weather the storm or adjust to the market conditions. But the memory price issue is going to be the number one thing that affects Nintendo's margins, and not if there's a new 3D Mario or not. So I'm really curious to see their year 2 expectations. But until then, let's get out of here. Thanks as always for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite app. Leave a 5-star review as well, it really helps. This podcast is also on YouTube, so like and subscribe there as well. I'm on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. Just search for Tokyo Game Life or find the links in the podcast description. If you like the podcast, be sure to share it with your friends and on social media. The next episode will be on February 22nd. See you next time. Matane!